So with my exam period being the week after next week, I have officially finished that stupid SJW course that I kept complaining about. This is the course that was mandatory for everyone for the first year, and I absolutely hated it. If you want to hear about my opinion when I first got into it and the stuff about last semester, I did some other videos on it, so you can find those. So this is going to be a sort of overview where I just look at the entire thing, I recap what I thought about it, and just all sorts of stuff like that. Be warned, there will probably be a lot of very angry ranting in this. So the very first thing that I found interesting is the weird way that the assessments are worded. Now in all my other courses, we had this thing where there was always, if there was a question that was like, do you agree or disagree, or is it true or false, you always had the option to go, okay, so I believe that it is this one, so I am going to then research and try and present my argument fairly. And that was pretty much it, unless they were trying to get you to explain a concept that they were teaching you, like in psychology, if there was a particular thing and they wanted you to kind of explain it. You know, just something that's kind of established, and they wanted to see if you could recognize this thing and all of its history and that kind of thing, just dealing with concepts to do with science and stuff like that. Other than that, if it was something that you could disagree with or agree with, or if you could kind of formulate your own opinions on it because it had that kind of emotional nature to it or it wasn't very clear, there would always be that option. Now with this class, there wasn't that option. I noticed that with all of the questions, there's always just this one-sided sort of thing. Some of the questions for the final essay that we did was, one was talking about how Australia Day is not a unifying force for all Australians or whatever, and it didn't have a explain why you disagree or agree, it was just like explain why it isn't. And all of the other questions could pretty much be summarized by explain why this thing that is like a foreign thing is being treated badly by Australia because Australia is the West, and obviously they treat things bad because they're evil because they're the West. That was pretty much it. And all you had to do was just find a bunch of studies or something that showed, you know, that they probably used the word whiteness unironically, and they talked about the West in, like, I don't know, social justice themes, and mention minorities, mention women, mention immigrants. If you can mention persons that are all three, you would probably get higher marks than if you hadn't. And that is how you boil down how you approach this class. If you're like me and you just want to kind of bullshit through it, because as soon as I walked in and I recognized what was going on, I was like, fuck it, I need to pass this because it's a core unit, so I'm going to do that, but I'm not going to put any other effort in besides that, because it's fucking stupid. I don't want to be in this place any more than I have to, because it's just terrible. It's fucking terrible. They don't even give a shit now. Last semester, if you go back and check out the videos I did on that, they at least kind of disguised it a bit. They at least put effort in to try and make it look like a normal class, or look like you had options, even though they kind of weasel worded some of the options. Obviously it was shit, but it was better than this one. In this one, it was like, oh well, I mean, they're going to be dropping the subject after this year, so we might as well just abandon everything else and try and cram as much of our brainwashing bullshit as we can into their heads. They just gave up. They gave up on anything besides just repeat after me, whatever my opinions are, and then I'll put it into your head. There you go, that's how I teach, right? I talked about the essay, but the first two assessments were summaries. That was it, just like, you have 300 words or 500 words to summarize this text that I'm giving you, and that was it, just summarize with this opinion or whatever. And then that was kind of like a primer for the assessment. That was the essay, which was pretty much the same thing. It had the question and everything, but you had to use one of the readings from the unit. So it was basically the same thing, because the last summary, the readings that we were using were from the unit as well. So you just had to pick one, and then, like, just do the essay. And you couldn't disagree, it was all just worded like, explain why this is. What do you mean you disagree with that? You can't do that. So it was shit. It was complete shit. And yes, the word whiteness did pop up occasionally. Everyone who taught the course, all of the professors, looked like they died 5 years ago, and the only reason that they were kicking is because they wanted to just further push their ideology onto people, and they were secretly sucking away the life force from all of the people sitting in the audience so that they could live longer. I think I saw one person that looked about 30 or something, 30 something, 40 maybe. One person. Everyone else looked like dinosaurs. You could just tell that this class was just completely, it was just this relic of something that was still clawing at relevancy, trying to get it, and the only way that they could ever get anyone to enroll in this course is if it was a mandatory course, and if they just kind of shat out everything at you and went, you know, we're not even gonna try, we're just gonna fucking put this shit at you, you can repeat it back to me to kind of convince me that my opinions are sticking with you, even though you're probably just bullshitting the entire thing, and then we're gonna go with it. That was pretty much the class. I'm gonna take a little bit to talk about the tutorials as well, because I just touched on the lectures so far. I didn't see other people's tutors for the tutorials because I just had my tutorial class, but my one was weird. The chick that I had also taught feminist history, and she was very proud of that fact, and I'm pretty sure that all the other ones did something similar as well. It seemed like the kind of course where that would be the case. But that's just an assumption, we'll stick with my tutor. So my tutor okay. So you know how you get when you first walk into these sorts of classes, in the first bit of the semester there's always that introductory thing where they try and get you to talk to the person next to you or to say your name and like what you're studying out loud in front of everyone because they want to get you to know each other or whatever. That's pretty much standard fare, and we did that, and that's normal, but the way we did that was weird. So when we were doing the standard introductory stuff, she kept looking at everyone, the tutor I mean, she kept looking at everyone like she was trying to size up how much oppression points they had. Like it was weird. The look on her face was just weird. It made me feel really uncomfortable, honestly, because she asked us where we were from and everything, and then she ended up talking to me about where I was originally from, and so she found out that I'm a person of color, a woman of color, and I'm not born here. So she had this look on her face like she was calculating how much of an oppression trophy I got if I was put up against a progressive stack, and you could tell that was going on in her eyes. She wasn't hiding it, and it just made me feel weird. I didn't like it at all, because in that moment it truly hit me what I was dealing with here and what these people were doing and how brainwashed they are and how fucking weird they are. I mean, in a smaller area like this where nothing really big happens, you kind of think, well, you know, you can see that these people kind of exist and you can see the BuzzFeeds and the Francesca Ramseys and all that, but it never really hits you like that because you may have met certain people who are kind of in a dialed down way the same thing, but it wasn't to such an extent, and then you see someone look at you like that and you kind of realize like, holy shit, I actually met a BuzzFeed. I actually met a Francesca Ramsey, you get what I mean? That's the feeling that I got when I walked into this semester, because last semester it was dialed down a bit. It was stupid, it was bullshit, but it was not as bad, and then I walked in here and they just completely gave up. The facade crumbled away and it was like, hey, this is the shit that we're trying to push onto you, take it please. And here's another thing, if they had presented this in a different way, I wouldn't care if it was social justice. I wouldn't find anything wrong with that, because if they presented it in a way that was just like, today we're going to be talking about this concept and I'm going to be pushing this argument on the board and you can feel free to agree or disagree but you have to explain why, I would have no problem with that. Because in the other units that I was doing, the core units, the one, it was basically just about like writing and the Enlightenment and stuff like that. That's what they did. They had the stuff that we knew and the stuff that, you know, all the philosophers or whatever said, and each week it would be like, here's a thing, here's what we're talking about, and you can kind of read the material, listen to what I'm saying, listen to what your tutor is saying, and then you have to think about it yourself. When you write the assessments, you have to think about it yourself, because we can tell if you just go look it up somewhere and try to get someone's view for you. You can't do that, you need your own view, you need to think about these things, you need to present an argument. You need to show that at least you're trying to figure it out. Even if you get something wrong, you can just kind of show that you try, you know how to write. Like, you're figuring it out, and that's what we need. That was pretty much it. If they had presented the social justice thing in that way, I would actually not have a problem with it. I would be like, oh, these arguments are stupid, but I would at least have an engaging kind of use for them. I wouldn't mind. Like, I honestly wouldn't mind. It would actually be a really cool course if they had a bunch of different political views, like, this week is social justice week, the next week is like Nazi week, the next week's like alt-right week or whatever, and you presented their arguments and then you go, what do you think about them? And if you disprove them, like if you disagree, present some arguments. Like, this assessment is going to be on picking one of these topics and then saying why you agree or disagree with them, showing studies and books or whatever the fuck. Like, after the core unit was over, I'd try and find a way to get it as an elective again, because that would be pretty engaging. No, it has to be social justice phrased in a way where you cannot escape when you're doing that course. That's the thing that bugs me. Even though I disagree with the social justice bullshit, the thing that actually bugs me is the way that they try to push it onto people. that's pretty much it. That's pretty much what you take away from this. The reason that I'm angry with it is because they tried to force it on people and they couldn't take no for an answer. That's my issue. If you have any similar experiences with social justice, or if you're trying to deal with that in your school or university, why don't you tell me in the comments? I think it'll be pretty interesting. I want to see the direction that education is going, because I'm not impressed with where it's going at the moment. I thought that maybe if you're in a different country or whatever, you could tell me about the way it's going over there. And even though this was pretty much me saying the same thing over and over again, being very angry and talking quite fast, I hope that you at least got some entertainment out of it. I hope that it's fulfilled what you wanted me to talk about, because I know a lot of people wanted me to talk about my semester at social justice. But I hope that you enjoyed it, and I'm really happy that I'm out of that course now.